Every night, when the valley fires died, Michael Caine lowered iron tongs into the embers and lifted out something no one else trusted to keep him warm. Mary knelt beside their bed and slipped the flat, glowing stones under the wool blankets, their heat already sinking deep into the bedding.
There he goes again, heating rocks like a nursemaid warming a cradle. That's not a man's fire.
Let them laugh. The stone doesn't forget the fire.
Rock bed. That man will wake up shivering with a pile of cold river junk at his feet.
Mary smoothed the blanket and pressed her palm over the stone's invisible heat. Her mouth set in a thin line. Under the wool, the stones radiated a slow, patient warmth. No flame, no smoke, just stored fire seeping through layers.
Stone remembers. Mary, it holds what the fire gives, and lets go slow, like how the river carved this valley over 1,000 winters.
That fool will freeze one night, and then he'll come begging for real firewood.
But the bed held its quiet heat, and outside, the winter had not yet shown what it was truly capable of. Morning light found Mary's hand still resting on the stone beneath the covers. It was warm, not faint warmth, but steady, as if the river had held its breath all night.
It's still warm. Michael, the stone never cooled.
Michael fed the fire, a single split log, then a handful of kindling. It was enough. Their woodpile stood thicker than a neighbor's after a full night's burning. At the market, Mary pulled her shawl tight against the cold and the colder stairs. Two women bent close near the salt barrel. One whispered the words "rock bed," and the other laughed behind her mitten.
They think we're fools. Let them. The stones don't care. You can laugh all you like. I slept warm last night without burning half the woodshed.
She turned away before they could answer and walked home, where the real answer was already stacked against the cabin wall.
Let them whisper, Mary. Every chord we save is a chord they'll wish they had when the deep cold comes.
They stood beside a woodpile that proved the point better than any argument. Michael left the cottage with the axe, but on the frozen trail, George stepped out of the trees and blocked his path.
Heading out for more kindling, Caine, or just looking for new rocks to tuck into your cradle?
The stones hold heat, 8 hours, longer than a cord of wood thrown on an open flame.
Fairy tale. You'll wake up frozen and come begging for a real fire.
George turned away laughing, but behind him the mountain wind had already shifted. That night, the valley plunged to 20 below. Frost grew on the inside of the windows, and the cold squeezed the cottage like a hand around a throat. Mary stirred in the dark, feeling the chill push through the blankets, and reached for the stone at her feet.
Still warm. Even now.
She smiled into the black, knowing something the town refused to believe. Outside, George's chimney belched smoke into the frozen air, his woodpile shrinking faster than ever. But under the Caines' blankets, a quiet victory had already been won. That morning, before the sun could thaw the frost from the windows, Michael knelt by the hearth and explained the one thing the valley had forgotten about stone.
Stone is a thief, Mary. It steals heat from the flame and holds it prisoner. Then it surrenders that heat back over hours, not minutes, slow enough to keep a bed warm until dawn.
Then why does the town mock us? They see our woodpile growing while theirs shrink. They know the cold is coming.
Because admitting stone works means admitting they've wasted wood for years. Fear doesn't just whisper, it laughs loudest.
Outside, George's axe fell in a rhythm that matched his rising worry, each swing a little harder, a little more desperate.
That rock hoarder has no right to have wood left when I am already running short. The winter isn't half over.
His woodpile, once a monument to his pride, had shrunk by half in the last month, but he refused to let his eyes drift across the yard to the Caines' tidy stack. His wife appeared in the doorway, her face tight with a question she didn't dare speak. She had seen the Caines' chimney smoke thin and steady, not belching.
Don't start. I won't hear it. I'll handle the wood.
But the seed was planted in his own house, the first crack in the wall of scorn, and the winter was still gathering its strength. 3 weeks later, the wood merchant hammered a new sign to his post. A cord now cost 50 cents, triple the October price.
50 cents. I'll be chopping my own before I pay that. Not like that fool Kane. He'd rather sleep with rocks than buy an honest log.
The men laughed, but it was a thinner sound than before. Outside the window, the mountains were white, and the cold had teeth.
50 cents a cord. And I've got maybe 2 weeks of wood left. Not enough, not nearly enough.
His wife stood in the doorway again, arms folded against the freezing air, her silence louder than any scolding. Across the yard, Michael stacked his firewood with the same unhurried rhythm, his pile still rising while the valley's supply shrank.
He's burning through his wood like a man fighting a fire with oil. One hard storm and his pride won't keep his children warm.
I told you, woman, I'll handle it. Now, get inside before you catch a chill.
Michael laid another split log on his stack and did not smile. He had no need to gloat. The cold would do the talking for him, and the deep cold had not yet arrived. The winter was still sharpening its knife. At the general store, the evening gathering had turned bitter. Wood was running short, and so was patience. The talk shifted from prices to omens, and the omens all pointed toward a cottage where the fire never seemed to need feeding. A man, near the stove, muttered that the winter was punishing them for something unnatural. His eyes drifted toward Mary, standing alone by the flour sacks. Then a woman's voice, low but sharp, cut through the murmuring. "It's witchcraft, those stones. They don't come from God's fire." Mary's fingers tightened around her basket.
Witchcraft. All we did was stay warm while they burned twice as much wood and mocked us for it.
She slipped out into the dark without a word, the freezing air burning her throat as she fled the whispers.
They called us witches, Michael, in front of everyone. A woman said our stones don't come from God's fire.
Fear puts fire in people's mouths, Mary. They're scared, and scared people reach for the nearest thing to blame. That's us.
What if they do more than whisper? What if they come to the door?
Outside, a handful of children pelted the cottage door with frozen snowballs and ran off laughing. The sound of their feet faded into the wind.
Then we'll be here, warm and alive, while they freeze. The stones don't care about accusations, and neither should we.
By mid-January, the valley had stopped pretending. Neighbors dragged split chairs to the stove, and the smell of burning varnish drifted through the frozen streets. Inside George Harlow's cottage, the fire shrank to a fist of flame. His wife wrapped the children in every blanket they owned, her face tight with silent accusation. From the window, Mary watched the widow Thorne's chimney. Thin smoke, then a pause, then almost nothing.
Michael, Edith's fire is nearly out. She hasn't fetched wood in days. She can't. We have to do something.
I see it, but if we help her now, the town will call it witchcraft confirmed. We have to wait, just until George breaks.
Wait until an old woman freezes to death? What kind of neighbor does that make us?
She looked again at the widow's cottage, the dark windows, the chimney smoke so thin it seemed to apologize for existing. George's wife caught his eye across the shrinking fire. She didn't speak, but her look said what the cold had already whispered. "Your pride is killing us."
Those stones, our stones, could save her. You know it. I know it.
I know, but one wrong move and they'll burn our home, not just mock it. We have to be sure.
That afternoon, a black wall of cloud swallowed the northern peaks, and the wind turned sharp with a smell of iron. George swung his axe at a frozen pine log, but the frost made the wood like stone. The blade bounced. He swung again, harder.
If I don't split this, the children freeze. Swing, swing.
The axe head struck a knot and shattered clean off the haft. George stared at the splintered wood in his hands. Michael watched from his window, his chest tight with something between pity and frustration.
When will enough be enough, Michael? That man is breaking himself out there, and the storm hasn't even started.
She's right. But if I force help on him, he'll fight me like a wounded bear. Pride is all he has left. I don't know, Mary. I honestly don't know.
Outside, George dropped the ruined axe and stood motionless, his breath pluming in the freezing air. The first heavy flakes of the blizzard began to fall. and somewhere inside him, Michael felt the last hour of waiting slip away. Through the rising snow, a mother carried her child toward the doctor's door. The small fingers were white as porcelain. Frostbite had already begun its work.
No more waiting. I won't let another soul freeze while we hide behind fear.
She pulled a flat stone from the edge of the hearth, already glowing with stored fire, and wrapped it in a thick wool cloth. She slipped out the back door, into a world already turning white, the basket heavy against her arm. At Edith Thorne's doorstep, she knelt and laid the basket down. The stone's heat melted a small circle in the frost, a silent promise of warmth. She hurried back through the deepening drifts, her footprints already vanishing behind her. Michael, trudging home from the woodshed, stopped. Through the swirling snow, he saw the empty doorstep, where a basket had been.
She went to the widow. After all my waiting, Mary did what I should have done.
Inside, Mary stood by the fire, her cheeks flushed with cold and something else. Michael entered and said nothing. Neither spoke. But the ground between them had shifted, and outside, the blizzard began to scream. The blizzard struck at dusk like a fist closing. Wind scoured chimneys, and one by one, the valley's fires gasped out. Inside the Kane's cottage, the stones under the bed frame glowed a steady dull orange, radiating a warmth no gale could steal. Michael and Mary slept without stirring. Morning revealed a valley buried in white. George Harlow's chimney was a dead finger pointed at the sky. No smoke, no sign of life. Michael went back inside and returned with a covered basket. 3 heated stones wrapped in wool, heavy enough to hold a night's worth of stored fire. He knocked on George's frozen door, the sound swallowed by the wind.
What is that? More rocks.
It's warmth, no strings. Take them.
Keep your witch stones. We don't need your kind of help.
The door slammed shut. Michael stood in the snow, the basket untouched, and inside him something cold and final clicked into place.
Asking permission is over. Next time, I'll break down the door if I have to.
Inside the dark cottage, George's family lay pressed together, breath misting in a thin white cloud. His wife's plea cut the silence.
She's right, but I can't. I won't go begging to a man who sleeps with rocks.
Across the frozen yard, Mary wrapped fresh stones in wool and slipped into the blizzard once more, a ghost carrying warmth. On Edith's doorstep, the earlier basket sat half buried in snow. Mary touched the stone inside, still faintly warm. She added the new ones, inside the cottage. Edith Thorne lay shivering beneath a thin blanket, her eyes glazed. Mary knelt and slid the hot stone under the covers.
You've been coming. How long? Shh. Just sleep. The cold can't hurt you tonight.
She stayed until Edith's breathing slowed, then slipped back into the howling white, a secret now shared between 2 souls. George Harlow stood over his children, their fingers bluish in the ember light, his jaw clenched until something inside him fractured.
Tomorrow, if we survive the night, I'll do what I swore I'd never do.
The morning brought no warmth, only a pale sun. Michael found George outside over the remains of his woodpile, fists clenched.
Another night like the last. George, and your children will die. Not from cold, from pride.
You think I don't know. You think I need a rock hoarder to tell me my family is freezing. I'd rather freeze than take your witch stones. You hear me? Rather freeze.
From the cottage window, Mary watched the exchange, her jaw set. She had already made her choice.
Tonight I go again. Storm or no storm. Edith will not die on my conscience.
Down in the village square, a notice was nailed to the board. The forecast for the coming night was 40 degrees below zero.
40 below. No one survives that without a plan. We have one.
He returned to the cottage and met Mary's eyes. No words passed, but the understanding was complete. The valley had hours to prepare. The Kanes had been preparing all winter. The hearth roared like a forge. Mary fed it split pine until a dozen stones glowed deep orange, each one a banked promise of survival. Michael wrapped each stone in wool, then oilcloth, so the heat would hold through a mile of frozen white. For Edith, A small basket. 3 stones, light enough for Mary to carry alone. For George's family, a travois. 6 stones lashed to a sled, heavy as a dead man but worth more than gold at 40 below.
We go together, or not at all.
I never planned it any other way.
They pulled the door shut and stepped into a world without mercy, the wind already howling their names. The snow swallowed their shapes before they had gone 20 yards, but they didn't look back.
If we don't reach them, we die. If we do, we're outcasts. There is no good choice, only the right one.
The blizzard screamed around them, but they put their heads down and walked into the white, past the point of turning back. Michael pulled the travois through a world erased white. He found George's woodshed by touch, then the door of the house beyond it. He hammered the frozen wood until his fist went numb. The scream of wind stole every sound, but he kept pounding. The door swung open. Helen's face appeared, hollow with cold. Michael didn't ask. He pushed past her into the dark room.
Blue lips, white fingers, no more time for asking.
He knelt by the dead hearth and ripped kindling from the small stash of pine cones and splinters left in a bin. His hands shook but didn't slow. He struck the flint once, twice, a spark, a curl of smoke. Then a flame, small and defiant, licked up through the pitchy pine.
Come on, catch. There's a family here that needs you.
He fed the blaze slivers of split log until it crackled with strength. Then he laid the stones along the growing coals, their wrapped forms steaming. He did not look at George. He did not wait for thanks. The work was the only language left. Behind him, a child's weak cough was answered by the fire's rising warmth. The Harlow house had not surrendered yet. Mary peeled off toward Edith's cottage, the basket a dead weight, the wind driving ice into her eyes. She found the door half buried, shoved it open with her shoulder, and stumbled into a dark room colder than the snow outside. Edith lay on the bed, eyes closed, breath so shallow Mary had to bend close to feel it.
Not yet. You are not leaving this world on my watch.
She pulled the stones from the basket, their wrapped heat almost too hot to hold, and slid them under the thin mattress at Edith's back and feet. Outside, the blizzard screamed against the frozen window panes. A monster denied its prey.
You've been coming every night, haven't you?
Every night. And I won't stop until the thaw.
Tears froze on Mary's cheeks as she nodded, but her hands stayed steady, tucking the blankets tight. She sat on the floor beside the bed until Edith's breathing deepened, the stones radiating their slow, patient promise. When the stones glowed through their wrappings, Michael lifted them with care and carried them to the pallet where the children lay. He slid the heat beneath the blankets, one stone at the small back, one at the feet, tucking the wool tight. The children's fingers, blue moments before, began to flush with color as the stored fire seeped into their blood. Helen Harlow buried her face in her hands and wept, not from cold, but from a hope she had stopped believing in.
They're warming right in front of me. Everything I called foolish is saving my family while I stand here useless.
George's legs gave. He slid down the rough wall, head falling into his hands, shoulders shaking with silent sobs. Michael did not turn. He fed another sliver to the fire and let the stones do what words could never manage. The room grew thick with heat, the frost on the window softening to a wet sheen as the cold outside screamed its fury. One child coughed, then sighed in sleep, the color in her cheeks now a living thing. And in the corner, the man who had laughed loudest wept the hardest, his pride dissolving like frost before a flame. Dawn broke pale and brittle over a valley that had held its breath all night. From 2 chimneys, smoke rose thin, but alive. Mary stumbled through the last drift, her basket empty, her face raw with cold and exhaustion. She had kept her promise. Her steps caught the eye of a neighbor, then another. By the time she reached the cottage, a small crowd had gathered. The Harlow door opened. George stepped out, his shoulders bent, his eyes red-rimmed but clear. He walked toward Michael. The crowd parted in silence. George stopped before the man he had mocked for months and spoke in a voice that cracked like thawing ice.
Can you teach me the stones? I need to learn.
Yes.
No one laughed. The wind had changed, and the valley could feel it. Michael did not gloat. He simply gestured toward the hearth he had never let go cold. The first stone of the old wall of scorn had fallen. Others would follow. Michael led the crowd to the frost-rimed clearing and built a fire in the open, his movements slow and deliberate, so every eye could follow.
Choose flat stones from the river. They hold heat longer. Bed them in embers until they glow, then wrap them tight.
Men and women scattered to the riverbank, returning with armloads of stone, as if discovering treasure for the first time. George knelt by the fire, clumsy and silent, setting his own stones among the coals. His hands still trembled, not from cold. Mary stood at the edge of the clearing, weaving with fatigue, when a thin hand caught hers.
This woman saved me. Every night, through the worst of the storm, she brought me heat and life.
The crowd turned and saw the widow's shawl, Mary's shawl, wrapped around Edith's shoulders. A murmur rose like a thaw.
I never wanted them to know. I just wanted her to live.
Michael paused and met Mary's eyes across the clearing. No words, only a nod that said more than any sermon. The stones in the fire glowed brighter, and the valley understood at last that the truest warmth had not come from the hearth. Within days, the valley wove a web of stone warmth. Every cold home had a fire, and every fire its stones. Under thin cloud, George and Michael hauled river stones side by side, their breath a single rhythm. Mary and Edith moved door to door, baskets of wrapped heat, their path worn deep in the frozen snow. At dusk, Michael lingered alone by the dying fire, turning the last coal with a stick. The clouds cracked open, spilling pale gold onto the white world.
I was wrong about the stones, about you. Thank you.
You kept your family alive long enough to learn. That's what matters.
A long silence settled, filled only by the hiss of cooling stone. George extended his hand, and Michael took it, a covenant made of calluses and cold. The valley still lay under 40 below, but the people no longer waited for mercy. They had learned to make their own. The village gathered one last time at the communal fire, the stones still glowing in the pit. A town elder rose from the crowd, his voice thin but steady in the frosty air. He said, "More lives would have been lost without the kind stones. We owe them more than we can repay."
Just rocks from the river. Nothing more.
A hush fell. Then a murmur of something like wonder rippled through the crowd. Above them, the thick clouds cracked open, and sunlight spilled onto the white world. Mary came to stand beside Michael, her hand finding his. Together, they looked out over a valley that no longer mocked, but listened. The child's trick had become the valley's truth, and the cold that once threatened them now lay beneath a blanket of light. No one would mock the stones again. Spring crept into the valley on the sound of dripping ice, soft and persistent against the roof. Mary lifted the river stones from the corner and set them one by one along the cold hearth ledge, their weight familiar in her hands. They were no longer tools but reminders, silent witnesses to a winter that had nearly broken them. Michael came in from the yard, his hands smelling of mud and meltwater. He picked up the nearest stone and turned it in his palm, surprised by the faint warmth the low sun had already given it.
Still warm. Even now.
He set it back among the others, lining it up like a book on a shelf, then stepped back. Mary came to his side and slipped her hand through his arm, her touch a quiet anchor. Outside, the snow retreated inch by inch, and the memory of the freeze faded with the drifts. But the stones remained, stacked and ready, not as a child's trick, but as a household's quiet inheritance. On the cold hearth, a single river stone still held a ghost of warmth, its gray face lined with a memory of fire. Through the window, the valley emerged from its white shroud, brown earth and green pines stitching through the last drifts. The river ran loud again, its stones sleeping beneath the current, patient and unchanged. Some homes in the valley stood empty. The deep cold had taken what it could, but in this cottage, the stones remained, not magic, just patience. A simple truth had kept a family alive through 40 below. Fire can leave, but stone remembers. Not everyone survives winter, but some learn to carry warmth where no one else thinks to look. And when the next winter comes, the stones will be waiting. When the fire dies, the stone remembers.